Time for an S50 update, and the Juno-X arrives. So first in this week's rant, why don't I give you an S50 update? Where are we? So basically, parts have been ordered, work has started. And if you're looking at the key, if you're looking over here, you can see there is an S50 keyboard in a very state of undress, shall we say. And if you've followed me on social media, you will have seen the pictures of the S50 in various states of repair as I've been stripping it down. But to summarise, at this week, where are we? Anyway, the tack switches have all been replaced on the front panel. And as far as I can see, they're all working, which is fairly good news. So that was the first thing. I haven't done a full system test on it yet. I will do a full system test when I get the thing back together. But at the moment, I'm just kind of working my way through the various jobs that I've identified. The second thing is I found what looks like a whole bunch of dry joints on the control board which attach to the vacuum tube. So they were either badly soldered, there seems to be somebody who's been in there before me, so they're badly soldered, or they've just cracked over time, which does happen. So I've basically sucked all the solder off, put fresh solder on there, and they all seem to be working, because every time I've switched the keyboard on since I've done the repair, and before I took the keyboard out, the keyboard was reporting, or the vacuum tube was displaying correctly. And in actual fact, it seems to be displaying brighter than it was in the past. So whether the dry joint issue also meant that not enough power was getting through, so the brightness was low, I don't know, but that seems to be where we are with it. So that's good news as well. Now, I've also, as you can see, because I held it up, I've stripped the key bed down. And what I've done here is started to sort of look at some issues on the key bed. Now, the first big issue I found on the key bed is actually it looked like a lot of things had been spilt through the keyboard over time. So the front of the key bed was pretty well damaged. Now, I don't know if I lift the key bed up. I've pretty much had to take that all back to bare metal, and it's been repainted just with something just to seal the metal more than anything else, not to make it look fantastic. And I did that on the grounds that it's my keyboard, and going forward it's a good repair, but it's not something I would be happy to sell on. So if I was going to sell it on, I'd probably strip that, get that sandblasted back to bare metal and then powder coated. But since it's my keyboard and I'm going to keep it, I'm not going to do that at this point. One of the biggest problems I've got at the moment is that parts that were ordered weeks ago for the bits I identified I needed to do haven't arrived yet. Some of them need to be, or at least one of the parts I ordered had to be manufactured. So there was going to naturally be a delay in that, because the company that manufactures them basically manufactures them on an order by order basis. So when you order it, the sooner you order it, the sooner it gets manufactured, and it just gets put in a queue behind other things that have been ordered to manufacture, so PCB stuff. So if you're in the queue behind a particularly large order, your order could be some time away. That is the nature of the beast, unfortunately. So they were saying that it could be 4 weeks based on the queue in front of it. Actually, that's dropped to 2 weeks, and the parts are now on their way from the US. Why did I get them manufactured in the US? Because the guy who designed it, that's where he put the parts to be manufactured, and rather than having to get the parts out of one system and put them into another system like PCBWay for argument's sake, it was just far easier just to get them manufactured and in the US. That's kind of a by the by. I did consider doing it another way. Now, this brings me on to my gripe for this week. My gripe is companies are sending notifications that they've shipped an item when in reality they haven't. What they've done is they've just created a shipping order in their system, and that then sends me an email saying your item has been dispatched, but it hasn't. It's still there. It's still at their company. It's just they've marked it as dispatched in their system. Now I have one item where I had the shipping notification last Monday. And I didn't take much notice. I've got to be honest and say I didn't take much notice of the shipping notification because I got a shipping notification. I thought, oh well, fair enough. Comes to Friday, and I'm still thinking, well, it was shipped and it was meant to be on expedited UPS, and I still haven't received it. So where is it? So I go into the shipping item and I click on tracking, and up comes the tracking for the item with UPS, and I find out that they created the dispatch note with UPS on Monday, but they didn't actually give UPS the goods until Friday. So that automatically means that I'm thinking that it's been shipped UPS, what do they call it, UPS expedited, and it hasn't been shipped at all because UPS haven't got it, so they can't actually move it. Which means that particular part, which is something I was hoping to do this weekend, I won't be able to do until next weekend with a bit of luck because it arrived this week. If you're not going to dispatch the thing for 5 days, don't mark it as dispatched. That's kind of my bottom line. Mark things as dispatched when you expect them to go out of the door, within 24 hours. And this is what I do when I dispatch things that have been sold on eBay. I mark them as dispatched when I walk down to the shipping office and post them. And in fact, in most instances, I mark them as dispatched when I'm entering the tracking number that I've got from the shipping office, having walked down there to dispatch them. So, my stuff is, if you see stuff comes up and I've marked it as dispatched, the reality is I have dispatched it because I've walked down the office because the shipping office for me, for a lot of the stuff I do, is a 10-minute walk away. All right, so I tend to walk down there because it gives me a bit of exercise. A lot of people will probably drive it, but I don't. I just put my stuff in a bag and walk down there. So that's reality. But they do. They mark things as dispatched and they haven't been dispatched. So they're effectively telling the customer not the right thing. Now, there is a requirement, of course, within these companies to meet service level agreements, or SLAs, the scourge of corporate life. And the other thing is the scourge of corporate life is the key performance indicators, or the KPI. Now, any of you that work in a corporate environment will know all about SLAs and KPIs. And I'll be honest with you, they're all a bunch of bollocks. Because you can fiddle an SLA and you can fiddle a KPI. And if you think, by marking things as dispatched, so that you can say, well, items were dispatched within 24 hours of completing manufacture, the business, the management aren't going to know the difference because they just run their reports out of the system and it says date of manufacture, date of dispatch, all good, within the KPI, met the service level agreement, hunky-dory, feel good about yourself, take the bonus. Reality is, anybody who works with these systems knows how to manipulate the system, especially if there are bonuses based on them. If there's a bonus based on the fact that you've got to meet your KPI or your service level agreement, you can bet your bottom dollar that the people who are bonused and incentivized on this stuff know how to cheat the system. Don't. Mark it as dispatched when it's actually dispatched, because two things. Number one, you're lying to the company, and number two, you're lying to the customer, which is even worse. Alright, rant over on this particular area, but it does annoy me because I thought when I got the dispatch note on Monday that even though they were coming from the UPS, 48 hours later, typically on this sort of stuff, it arrives here. Yes, on the eBay global shipping system, when it's marked as dispatched in eBay, it can take something like 3 weeks to get from the US to here on the eBay shipping system. But when it comes across UPS expedited, it's normally 48 hours from A to B. So, anyway, rant over, move on to the next topic. Remember, like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Go over to Instagram and follow me there. Go over to Facebook, follow me there. That's where the normal notices are. And consider becoming a Patreon. Well, The big news this week is that Roland have launched another synth ship. They've launched another synth. They've launched the Juno-X, which is basically another unit using the ZEN-Core engine and ZEN-Core technology that's currently available in the Phantom range and the Jupiter-X. And the reason I've said it that way is because the ethos behind the Jupiter-X is the same ethos that's behind the Juno. And in actual fact, if you go onto the Roland Cloud now, you can download the Jupiter-X editor, and you can also download the Juno-X editor as well. This is starting to give us a bunch of clues. Aesthetically, the Juno-X takes its visual style from the Juno-106, with a light grey body, white writing with blue and red bannering, in the same shades as the original 106. It's definitely pitching itself at that 106 mark. In addition to ZEN-Core recreations of the Juno-60 and 106, which are the engines that are on this machine, it ships with the RD Piano and XV5080 engines, which I suspect are exactly the same engines that are on the Juno-X. Sorry, the Jupiter-X. They've also done the same on the Juno as they did on the Jupiter, which is they've included the arpeggio rhythm and arpeggiation systems, which was again a staple part of the Jupiter. And personally, I found a lot of fun to play with. In fact, I've had great fun playing with the arpeggiation system of the Jupiter. It is pretty, well, I don't want to use the word fun, but it is just fun. It's a fun system, and you can get some fairly interesting rhythms out of it just by doing not a lot than playing a bass line. So I found it fun. I haven't really recorded anything seriously with it yet, but it's the same engine that's used on the Phantom as well, so I suspect any Phantom owner out there has been having fun with that arpeggio system. I'll get it right in a minute. But if you strip back all the hype that surrounds the launch of the Juno-X and ask, what are you getting that, say, the Jupiter-X or the Phantom cannot give you? Well, there's already a cloud version of the Juno-106 plug out, and you can get that on the Jupiter-X. So you're getting a brand new Juno-60 engine on this, which at the moment I can't see being available for the other platforms. The question is it going to be limited to just the Juno-X, or is it going to be made available on the other platforms? I don't know. There's no indication one way or the other from Roland. We'll have to wait and see on that one. Again, the arpeggio is found on the Jupiter-X, and I haven't been able to see if the rhythm algorithms on the new Juno-X are different to the rhythm algorithms on the Jupiter-X or the Phantom, or whether they all take their same heritage. It's an interesting one. I don't know the answer to. Open question. So on the face of it, you turn around and say, well, actually, I'm not getting a great deal on the Juno-X that I don't already have if I have a Phantom or I have a Jupiter. But then let's spin it another way. If you're into the 80s chorus driven Juno sound, you are getting this in spades. In fact, I understand there are actually 5 choruses or 5 chorus modes available on the Juno-X. And you can apply the chorus modes in parallel and sequential to each patch or each part, and there are 4 instrument parts and 1 rhythm part, exactly the same format as there is on the Jupiter. So the 5th part, of course, is reserved for the rhythm section of the keyboard. So in fact, actual fact, you can lay out 4 Juno 106s or Juno 60s or combinations of the two with different sounds on top of each other to form your patch. Now that's quite powerful actually, because on a lot of other keyboards you're kind of limited. Now you can do this on the Jupiter. You can layer a Juno-106 on top of a Juno-106 on top of a Juno-106 if you were so inclined. But you also get the Jupiter-60 with this. Now, given that this was actually launched this week, there has not really been enough time for the influencers to really get their under the bonnet experiences out into the market space. Not enough time yet. We have seen stuff from people like Mr. Tuner and Ghetto Bus starting to play the keyboard, but not really getting under the bonnet. Yes, the manual is available, and I haven't been through the manual, honestly. It's one of those things that, you know, I will start to look at if I feel that the platform is right for me. But the influencers at the moment are really just getting into demonstrating the sonic capability of, you know, it's the teaser. It's the, this is what this keyboard can do, rather than actual functionality of what it does. So there's not a lot out there about functionality at the moment. Not a lot. Mr. Tuner, I was watching his videos, and he's done a couple of videos. He did one video which was all about, you know, this is the keyboard, and did a kind of tutorial about part layering, part construction, at a very high level, I might add. And he's also done another video about comparing the Juno-X to the Juno-106, which I haven't watched fully yet, but I have cursory glanced at it. But there's not an awful lot out in terms of detail. There's a couple of other channels out there that have made comments about the Juno-X has arrived. Great, bit like me. But there's a couple of, I've seen a couple of videos saying, what are your alternatives? Well, I would have thought that's pretty obvious to me, but maybe I need to do a video about what are the alternatives to the Juno-X, because the alternatives, as far as I can see, are buy yourself a 106, buy yourself a JU-06A, because I've got to be honest, when I had 106 here, when I had Richard's 106, I tested the JU-06A, and I can tell you now that that is so close to the original Juno in terms of tone and patch. In fact, I actually, off camera, I actually did a piece where I got the oscilloscope out, and I actually looked at the oscilloscope on some of the patches, and they were very close in terms of the pattern that was rendered on the oscilloscope. But I didn't film that, unfortunately, so, you know, you kind of have to take my word for that, because I didn't put it in the camera, because it was just one of those things I did one evening with the cameras not being around. So that's the second option. Third option is you could use System 8, because that has a Juno plugin. Fourth option, you could use the Roland SoundCloud version of the Juno. Fifth option, there are a couple of other VSTs out there that are pretty close. I say pretty close, they're not the same, but they are pretty close in terms of how they work. The Roland SoundCloud, again, I did not do an oscilloscope on it, but I did try the SoundCloud version against the JU-06, which I said is really close, and it's as close to the JU-06 as the 106 was to the JU-06. Anyway, but there's not a lot of material that's been pushed out to market. That's what I'm trying to say at the moment on the Juno-6 in terms of the jury is out. I'm going to guess that the Jupiter-X was the model that the Juno-X was modelled on. Because if you look at both instruments and you look at the functionality, both instruments share a bunch of features first off, including part assignments, multi-brand filter sets, so you can have it in Roland mode, in Mog mode, in, I can't remember what the other one is now without looking at the keyboard, but there's a set of filters that you can just apply at a touch of a button. And so therefore the capabilities and limitation of the Jupiter, I suspect, are also going to be the capabilities and limitation of the Juno-X, because I'm pretty sure that it's underlying, if you looked inside the SYNTH, the technology underlying that is pretty much going to be the same. The interface is different, but the technology that runs it is going to be exactly the same as the Jupiter-X. The first thing for me is that this is a physical keyboard. That's the key point, and I like physical keyboards. You know that. If you've watched the channel, you know I like keyboards. I like the touch, the feel, the sliders, the knobs, the buttons. You know, VSTs are wonderful, but they just don't do it for me. Hardware all the way. And I'm lucky enough, well, I'm not lucky enough because I can't have it here now, it's all in storage. But I was lucky enough that I could have a lot of my stuff out pretty much when inspiration took. So I have no space for a physical keyboard, but that doesn't stop me going for the keyed version when I see this stuff. You know, I'm kind of looking at the Oberheim, the sort of Behringer Oberheim UBX-A, and I'm still toying up between the desktop and the keyed version of that. Along comes the Jupiter-X, and I'm saying, well, I've got a JU-06, but would I use a Jupiter-X? I'm pretty sure the answer is going to be yes. So there you go. The second thing I like is the controls. Like the Jupiter-X, once you kind of mastered the basic navigation of the keyboard, mainly through the sliders and the knobs on the front of the keyboard, you can pretty much understand how the keyboard works. And they've kind of made it close enough to the original that if you understood how the original 106 or the original 60 worked, you can pretty much work out how this Juno-X is going to work. Now, not all the sliders and faders and knobs, etc., will be a one-to-one mapping, because obviously the 60 and the 106 was slightly different in terms of how they generated and how the user interface was. But if you're used to that style of interface, you can get changes to the tone very, very quickly. Which, you know, is one of the ways. The only issue I have is that Roland have again chosen to use a small graphical user interface on this keyboard, and I wish they would use a slightly bigger interface. Now I suspect they're going to turn around and say it doesn't look right aesthetically when you're trying to sort of imitate a legacy keyboard, and I kind of get that, but then you publish an editor that you have to load on your computer that actually gives you access to all the parameters without having to fiddle through layers of menus. But it also points to the fact that this is very much pointing back to this underlying common technology within the Jupiter-X and the Juno-X. Now, I'm going to keep my powder pretty dry about further comments on this platform for the reasons I stated. I don't understand at the moment enough about the platform and how it's put together, and more than its sonic capabilities that are currently being demonstrated. Question is, do I want one of these? Hell yeah. Of course I do. But my head is saying, John, you're broke, and I am. So the acquisition of one of these may be some way down the line. So for now, keep watching the videos by people like Mr. Tuner and salivating over the iPad version that's going to come. I said over the iPad version. What a load of rubbish. Keep salivating over YouTube on your iPad. That's what I meant to say. Duh. Homer Award. And on that note, I'm going to say, live long and prosper, and catch you later. Bye-bye.